There is nothing better than to dig your teeth in a nice warm focaccia. And I'm going to show you how to make it. It's super easy. We're going to do something really fun today. We're going to make focaccia, more specifically Focaccia Toscana. In Italy, depending on the region, the focaccia is a little bit different. I love the Toscana because it's nice and thick, and it's softy and spongy, so you can cut it in half, you can fill it up with good stuff, or it's just great to just absorb olive oil. And this recipe is actually really good because it takes about an hour before you put it in the oven. So it doesn't take as much as the bread recipe, which you need to let it rise a couple of times. The ingredients are quite simple. You got your water, 225. To the water, we're going to add 15 grams of dry yeast. And remember, when we did the bread, we only used 8. So this is actually double the amount of yeast for the focaccia. As always, when using the yeast, we're just going to add a little bit of sugar. It just helps the activation process. So we give this a whirl and we put it aside. So we put our yeast aside and just let it activate. I'm going to use a mixer, but you can use it by hand. It doesn't really matter. We're going to use 500 grams of flour. Now, you can just use white bread flour. That's totally fine. I always like to put a little bit of Semola, which is a product of durum wheat. And I think it just adds a little bit more character when you make bread, when you make focaccia. So I'm going to be doing 450 grams of plain flour and 50 grams of Semola. And to finish things off, we're going to add 10 grams of salt and 2 tablespoons high quality extra virgin olive oil. So if you didn't have the machine, what you would do is that you would start working with a spoon or with a fork inside here until it became incorporated enough for you to be able to put it on the bench. I showed a little bit of the technique in my bread video, so I'll just put a link up there so you can check it out. Today, we're just going to make it a little bit quicker. We're going to use the machine. And with the machine, we just start mixing it up and we slowly add the water and the yeast. So we let this knead for about 5-7 minutes. And we're going to make it into a little bowl. We're going to let it rest for 20 minutes. So to make a bowl, you can just use your hand. It doesn't need to be particularly fancy at this stage. Just put a little bit of olive oil at the bottom, just like that. And we'll just use this to grease up our little bowl. And this will make sure that as it proofs, it doesn't stick to the side, so we can work with it afterwards. Nice and shiny, nice and greasy. Okay, so this goes in. Always make sure you put a damp cloth, because what you want is an environment which is warm and which is moist. So we're going to use our usual cheat. So I've switched on just the light in the oven, and we're just going to let this here. Maybe it's going to save us 5 minutes. Maybe we'll check it out in about 15 minutes and see how it looks. With 15 minutes nearly on the clock, let's just oil up our serving pan, or serving tray, I guess. Nice and oily so it doesn't stick. And now that the dough had time to find itself, it's time for the dough to meet tray. We're gonna hang out together for a while, so dough meet tray, tray meet dough. So our dough comes off. Without ruining the air bubbles, we just put it down, and this is gonna start getting the shape of the tray. So guys, make friends. We cover it and we put it back in the oven, just with the light on, for another 15 minutes, and then we'll do the next step. So with 20 minutes on the clock, you can see this is beginning to spread away. Now it's already starting to form some bubbles. So we don't want to be violent, we want to be very delicate. So what we need now is a rolling pin, which in my case doesn't really fit this. So I'm going to use my trusty Homer Simpson beer mug. Just a little bit of oil so it doesn't stick. And you would do the same thing if you had a rolling pin that actually fit the tray that you decided to use. And you just do it once. You start from the middle and you just press it to one side. Then you turn around and you do exactly the same. You start from the middle and you press it to one side. That's it, only once. So we managed to stretch it a bit, exactly like we did before, wet cloth over it. So we're gonna put it back in the oven for another 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, we're gonna take it out and I'll show you the last step before we finally put it in the oven to cook. Doubled in size. So now is the final step before we let it rise a little bit more and then put it in the oven. We need to prepare the salamoia. So I've got 60 grams of water. I'm just gonna add 60 grams of olive oil. So it's a 50-50 mixture. And then I'm gonna put about 15 grams of salt. Give this thing a little whiz. Make sure everything is nicely incorporated. And now we go back here. You can get your little fingers inside this little salamoia. And now, as I tell my son, gentle hands, and you want to make little holes. And this will help the focaccia capture all the salamoia that we're doing. And we stretch it a little bit more by doing this as well. So on our final race for the next 20 minutes, this thing is gonna completely cover up. So we can use a little brush, we can be gentle. And of course, all this salamoia is gonna go into these little holes, and it's just gonna stay there and make the most amazing flavor. And by the way, this olive oil, which has just been pressed 2 months ago, the smell is fantastic. And then in these little holes, you can do a variety of things. So I'm gonna be using rosemary because I just love the smell of rosemary in the focaccia. But you can do cherry tomatoes, you can do olives, you know, anything which you think is tasty in a piece of bread. So we can take the rosemary and we can just put it inside the little holes. And what's gonna happen is that this is gonna rise a little bit more and it's gonna encapsulate the rosemary inside. When my wife does it, she does it all so pretty and even. This thing is a bit more of a freestyle approach. So at this point, we just let it rest for 20 minutes here. And this gives us enough time to switch on the oven and get it to the right temperature. So we want 200 degrees Celsius in fan setting. So we're gonna leave this another 20 minutes. By that time, oven will be ready and we put it in. With 20 minutes more rest, this has managed to get a little bit puffier and it's taken all the spaces on the corner that was before. Now we're gonna go and put it in the oven, 25 to 30 minutes. And we need to decide how we want our focaccia, whether golden brown or a little bit darker, that's up to you. So 25 minutes, we keep an eye on it and then we decide what to do. And while we wait for the focaccia to get cooked, if you've not done so already, please smash the like button and subscribe down below. Absolutely stunning. Let's take it. Careful not to burn ourselves. So what you want to do now is you take it and you put it in a cooling rack so it can keep being crunchy and absolutely delicious. And before we cut this, we need to let it rest for about 10-15 minutes until it cools down a little bit. Now that it's warm, we take some coarse salt and we just put it all on top of it. And you need to do the salt bit when the focaccia is still nice and warm. So the focaccia has been resting, it's looking gorgeous. So let's open it up and see if it's fluffy. It does the right sound. It's got crunch and it's got fluff. It's very, very soft. Look at this. And it's got this great crunch here. You can hear it. Yet it's so soft. Okay, let's just give it a quick taste. Let's try this. Very soft, very crunchy, very tasty. So give it a shot, let me know how it goes, and buon appetito.